Okay, with Abraham Maslow, and this is the third force, and I want to clarify this. I use the term force. It could be the first school of thought, the second school of thought, the third school of thought. I use force. It's somewhat accepted in the literature. That's force, Force. It is somewhat is accepted. We've gone through the first force, which focuses on the unconscious and how certain events go into our mind. And then when they're in our mind, in our unconscious, they influence our behavior. That's the first force. Second force. We are born a blank slate. And since an individual is born a blank slate, the environment writes on that blank slate, and that's why we are who we are. Well, now with the third force, we have two individuals in this, Abraham Maslow and Carl Rogers. We're going to start out with Abraham Maslow. You've probably heard of him. He had the 5 steps, the hierarchy of needs, starting with basic needs and then going on up to needs that aren't near as basic to survival, but then they are being needs, and they kind of go along with existentialism. I've introduced existentialism before because we hear the term coming up, existentialism, and so I alluded to it before. You may have even done a little work on existentialism, but in the eclectic section, we're going to take a little bit deeper look at existentialism. Well, this is Abraham Maslow, and Abraham Maslow was born in 1908, passed away in 1970. He grew up in New York City, and he had kind of a rough time of it there in New York City. They were giving him a bad time, so he took up weightlifting so he could fight those who were harassing him and who were bullying him, and so he would be a little bit stronger. Anyway, this is Maslow, and I would imagine that his life, and we look at the lives of the individuals through the brief sketch of biographies of these individuals, how growing up a certain way will influence how a person turns out. How the parents treat the children, the environmental influences, whether or not the blank slate is written on, or whether or not the unconscious is causing them to behave in a certain way. Nonetheless, parenting styles can certainly bring about a difference in children. And Maslow started with experimental behaviorists. And this is kind of what is interesting, because he was part of the second force. He was an experimental behaviorist, and then his psychological path changed, and now we have humanistic psychology. This basically takes the individual, this is the third force, 1, 2, 3. This takes the individual from where they are at and then moves them past that point. We don't care so much what has happened in the past. We're not concerned, we're not concerned about what has happened in the past, but we look at you as you are today, or look at the individual as the individual is today, what the individual has to present, and then we will move from that point. That's part of the humanistic approach, and it's also a part of existentialism. And I want you to remember, you don't have to accept any of these theories. You can accept part of the theories, or you can accept all of the theories. We're not so grounded in this that when a person says something, this is the way it is and it's no other way. We are just looking at the thoughts and where these individuals come from. Now, he married his cousin. Maslow married his cousin. And another influence that really, yeah, he married his cousin. And another profound influence on Maslow, and I believe that it has an influence on a lot of individuals, and that's war. War is such a negative factor, and these individuals, during World War II, there were a lot of individuals in concentration camps, and Maslow realized the horrors of war, and they think it is from this aspect that he developed his concept of self-actualization. Self-actualization merely means doing the very best that you can do. But what you have in your mind, knowing that I have tried my best. Now we hear this statement made quite a bit. I hear it quite frequently. Well, I tried my best. I can't do any better. But deep down inside, they feel as though, and I visited with them afterwards, we could do better. We could do more. Now, I know that there are circumstances where we're just limited. We've pushed it as far as we can. We cannot push it any further. I realize that. But self-actualization is being the best that you possibly can be. Now, if we roll the clock back to Sigmund Freud said, even though his theory was based on sex integration, Sigmund Freud stated that the greatest need that a person has is striving. That's striving. That's working towards a what? Working towards a goal. And most theorists certainly are proponents of working towards a goal. Now, Abraham Maslow, in self-actualization, studied with an individual by Max Wertheimer. He was a Gestalt psychologist. Now, here's what Gestalt psychologists look at. They say that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And this stands to reason, and I think one of the reasons they said that is because individuals and theorists like to tear the individual apart and look at the smaller part. Well, an example of this would be if you parked your automobile along the curb or in a parking place or wherever you parked your automobile, and someone came along and took it apart. And so when you return to your automobile, the entire automobile was there, but it was in parts. Tire here, a tire over there, a door here, a window there, like old McDonald's farm. Everywhere car park. Probably wouldn't drive it too far. But if that car was reassembled in its original condition, we could open the door, get into the automobile, turn the key on, and drive it away. So in this instance, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, and that's one of the main tenets of Gestalt psychology, and he studied a great deal with Max in this area. Now, Maslow has a hierarchy of needs. You've probably seen that, starting with the physiological aspect, safety and belonging. These are somewhat what's called deficiency needs here, these ones down below here. But when we get to self-esteem and self-actualization, they call these B, as in boy, B needs or being needs. And I really appreciate this because in order to go to the next rung, it's necessary to have this one satisfied. Then we could go up here. It's good to have this one satisfied. The third rung is important. Love and belonging. People want to belong. They want to belong in a group. They want to belong to another, possibly another individual. Now, if we tie these together, and you remember Erik Erikson talking about identity, that was the main focus of Erik Erikson. And basically, what Erikson said, this identity. Well, love and belonging to a group also gives a person an identity. So we can start to tie these various theories together. Remember that this is the third force, taking the individual from where they are at and moving on. They don't say that the individual is a blank slate. They don't say that an individual has a lot of unwanted thoughts or unwanted garbage in their unconscious, and this is why they are not working or behaving properly. Uh, the humanists take the individual, they accept, kind of hard to comprehend once in a while, they accept the individual. They may not care for the behavior, but they accept the individual. So somewhat they are dividing the two entities up, behavior and individual. They feel as though are two separate aspects. So this is the introduction to humanism, and we have one more to go in this area, which will be Carl Rogers, and then we will go into the eclectic portion of this course. So until Carl Rogers, have a good day.